basically revert back to.
We revert back to like the yeah. So because you think about it, the progress didn't really help everybody. It's a little bit like, it's a bit like like retail in Hong Kong, right? So like with the a lot of mainlanders coming, a lot of people would benefited, but there are a lot of people who didn't. So probably that's why they're on the streets, right? So it's a little bit because at any point in time, any kind of progress would not be able to be evenly distributed. And in this case, yes, you could say that certain merchants, as well on the Chinese side, could have benefited, but for most people they didn't, right? And and think about it, even by 1949, the literacy rate within men in China was 15%. So we've got a 1.5. So again,
and women much lower.
Zero. Like my grandparents, my grandma, both my grandmothers couldn't write. Yeah. So and you think about it, like so you've got, like it's basically which side would you go on, right? Because let's say you're like just a normal peasant. You could either join Christianity, right? Because you're basically wanting someone to protect you, right? Or because local government could not have helped you at all, right? So what's the other thing? You organize yourself. When you organize yourself, what's interesting is all these chants, the whole like eyes are blue, foreigners kind of thing, like it couldn't have been written by the peasants. So who wrote them? It was the local, so-called the local gentlemen, 士绅. 士绅, who are they? Actually they still have them in like the new territories. They're like the villages like old gentlemen, like you say, like old gentlemen or like the local leader, and they're supposed to be.
What is the village chief?
村长? No, but not really. It's like 士绅 means it's like maybe like a few villages. You've got like some older gentlemen who are well respected. And these well-respected would kind of be the judge of very local disputes, like you stole somebody else's chicken or something like that. Like it wouldn't go to the governor, it wouldn't go to the local governor. You would go to him, and the older guy would be like, who did it? Oh, it's you. Okay, so don't do anything. Just give me back the chicken and shut up. Something like this. And so when when so-called the imperialistic German missionaries came, and some people would actually then go with them, you created this like a power vacuum. And so the local gentlemen would obviously be probably the most hostile against them. And that's why they created, or they helped with writing the chants and stuff for these peasants who've had bad times with local Christians. There was a lot of fighting. For example, there was this woman who was hitting her donkey because her donkey wouldn't move. And it was just crying and not moving. And so the woman said, 你再叫, 你再, as in like, you shout again, but then it sounds exactly the same as like you are a Christian. And so when she was hitting the donkey and saying that you are a Christian, some of the Christians actually grabbed her and like beat her up and forced her to pay as a ransom or like some kind compensation.
Some of the peasants or
the Christian peasants. So most of the time the missionaries probably did not do much in terms of the violence against peasants, but then their intention was to make sure that there are enough followers of Christ. Yeah. And yeah, so
I would assume that these missionaries were all fluent in Chinese.
Probably. A lot of the old missionaries are probably not just fluent in Chinese; they're fluent in a few different dialects as well. Yeah. So
but these village gentlemen, wouldn't they then, given their position, wouldn't they have carved out to benefit from all this, like with the trade, with the railroads coming in, so they would be sort of pro?
Probably, but they're definitely losing their influence and control, right? They might not be able to gain. I mean, you think about it, who gained, right? It's probably.
Well, this trade and stuff, wouldn't they sort of make sure that benefited them first?
Well, they probably have enough influence in the local level rather than at the higher level with the whole state, right? So, but in any case, it happened in Shandong, and with 1898, with the Germans going deeper into Shandong, there was this more and more conflicts happened, and then so at the time, the local official is a Manchurian official called Yu Xian, and Yu Xian was in a very bad place because the boxes, their chant was this: help the Qing, fight the foreigners. Now, if you're the local official, you're in a really bad position because you know they're bandits. And so you try to put them down. But if you put them down, their chant is helping you, fighting your own enemy, the foreigners. So what can you do? So Yu Xian was kind of like in a it was a very difficult position. And then at that point in time, comes Christmas, 1899. There was this young British missionary called Reverend Brooks, went to his sister's wedding in another town in Shandong. And on his way back, he basically hit on some basically met some Shandong version of ISIS and kidnapped him. And then during the night, he tried to escape. And when he tried to escape, he tripped, and then the Boxers grabbed him and cut his head off. And so this whole thing just spread around the country. And so one of the things was the foreigners demanded that Yu Xian must be taken away. He cannot be the governor of Shandong anymore. And who did they get? They got, remember Yuan Shikai? Yuan Shikai, who would later become the president of the Republic of China. At that point in time, it was the army officer in Tianjin, around Beijing, under Ronglu. And he had 7,000 soldiers working for him. And so him and his 7,000 soldiers, the generals, 5 of them eventually became the presidents of China in the 1910s and 1920s. And so they went into Shandong. And Yuan Shikai is actually Li Hongzhang's, remember Li Hongzhang, the main guy of modernization of China. He's Li Hongzhang's protege. So he knew that this is not going to work, especially because he was training his soldiers in the German way. So he knew that the Boxers' possession of the guard that caused no penetration of the bullets didn't work. But he didn't think of a smart way to illustrate that. So he actually got some of the top leaders of the Boxers in Shandong at the time, came to his place for dinner. After a few drinks, and Shandong people drink a lot, after a few drinks, Yuan Shikai asked the Boxer leaders, hey, is it true that bullets cannot penetrate into your body? And then the Boxer leaders were like, yeah. And Yuan Shikai was like, really? He was like, yeah, really. Let's see. And so lined them up and then boom, 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 boom. Oh, I guess not.
My goodness.
Yeah, so it was a very scientific way of showing.
Why would they say that?
No, because that's what they sell.
Yeah.
So they are supposed to be able to train themselves in the dark arts, where none of the foreign guns that the bullets can penetrate.
Do they actually believe that?
Well, actually, what happened was in the local villages they have the guns, and then rather than putting bullets in, they put mud or they put clay, and so when it shoots, it actually just hits you like clay, like paintball. It's a bit like paintball. Or if it's a sword or anything, they will hit themselves like this. So you can see acrobatics in China. They still have that, right? But that's hitting and sliding is 2 different things, right? So basically, Yuan Shikai did something very, very, very commonsensical. So and then the Boxers realized that hey, we can't stay in Shandong anymore, so they had to go somewhere. So it's kind of like rats. I'm sorry, I can't think of a better illustration. So they went north to Hebei, or at the time called Zhili. Zhili basically just means the direct governance, directly governed by the emperor, because that's where Beijing is. So they went to Zhili. As they went to Zhili, that we'll be talking about in the springtime of 1900. In the springtime of 1900, they first went to Tianjin. And in Tianjin already, there were hundreds of thousands of Boxers. And Tianjin was also a very interesting place because it was also a port. And because of the international trade route and the sea transportation, a lot of people lost their jobs. And you think about it, Cao, they're called Cao Bang, Cao as in transportation via the river. They are actually the ancestor of what is now the Taiwanese gangsters, called Qing Bang. And Chiang Kai-shek is from Qing Bang, as in, and all the Shanghainese triads are Qing Bang. And all the Cantonese triads are called Hongmen, Hong and Qing. Hong just means like Sun Yat-sen would be a triad from Hongmen. And all the triads in Hong Kong today have the ancestral roots from Hongmen. And most of the Taiwanese Shanghainese, if you watch any movies with like Shanghainese gangsters, they'll be from the Qing Bang, and Qing is from Cao. Cao means transportation workers.
Is that the root Taobao? Like Taobao, the online?
No, nothing. No, that's Taobao. Taobao, the Cao, yeah.
Okay.
Completely different word. And as they were going to Zhili, it's very close to the Empress Dowager now, right? So the Empress Dowager, what's interesting is one must be able to decipher. For most people, I don't know, most people would think that the Empress Dowager, this was one of her worst decisions in life, and that is being supportive of the Boxers. But if you look at the Empress Dowager's level of control, the lack thereof, it was probably one of her smartest moves ever, because she had no position. So for most time, she was like, okay, because from time to time they killed a few foreigners, and then the Empress Dowager would be very mad, right? Like, you know, how can you do this? And then another time she started giving money to the Boxers. So it's up till the end of May when the Boxers were actually circling around Beijing. Then actually within the within the diplomatic circle within Beijing, they started talks about what to do. At the time, the Qing government was asking them, "Why don't you leave? Why don't you leave?" But one guy was particularly aggressive, and that was the German ambassador, Kettler. He was like, you know, you look at after the Sino-Japanese War, China should be like the German sausage, where you chop it into bits and have it one by one. So he was all into partitioning, and the Brits were like, no, we're not going to do that, right? Because the Brits had 70% of the trade. If they partitioned China, if anything, the Brits would actually have more to lose than to gain. And so, but then the Boxers, that's a reality. It was going around around circling Beijing. Some have gone to Beijing already. And then at that point in time, the Empress Dowager wanted to know if they're for real or not. So she actually got one of her main lieutenants called Gang Yi. Gang Yi was the main person who were against Guangxu and asked for the disposition of Guangxu. And so Gang Yi and a guy called Zhao Shuqiao, went together. And Zhao is in a very tough position. He saw the Boxers and he was like, this is no way it's going to work. But Gang, what is on this side, it's on the pro-Boxer side, because you look at this, these are all Manchurians. And Manchurians, unfortunately at the time, you know, if you're born as an aristocrat, they're usually lower level of education. They tend to be more superstitious. They believe in Shama. They're like a very ancient, kind of like a Tibetan Buddhist kind of religion. So for these things, very susceptible to this kind of stuff. And he said, this is going to work. And so when both of them went back to the Empress Dowager asked Zhao, hey, is this for real? Zhao was like, well, they look interesting. And Gang was like, no way, like they're like the best. Like the eyes turned purple and they're like none of the bullets can penetrate. And so the Empress Dowager kind of believed in Gang. Okay, so because you look at it that way, why would these people, even if they knew, this is what's interesting, politics make people stupid. Why would these people, even if they knew for a fact that this is just all witchcraft and none of this is scientific, why would they believe in it? It's because these people, you can actually use these people for your own political capital. So for them, they were thinking about, if you gather all these Boxers, bring them into Beijing, and I've got all the armed forces within Beijing, I can encircle the Empress Dowager and Guangxu. And that's exactly what they did. And so by early June, they were already in Beijing. The Empress Dowager was like, okay, this looks kind of interesting. From the Empress Dowager's perspective, she also had to be semi-protective, semi-supportive as well, because the armed forces in Beijing are controlled by Duan and Zhuang. And then there's one phrase in Chinese, never mess with the masses. So if you've got 100, 200,000 Boxers around your city, you don't just say no, right?
We told CY
and then eventually, early June, they entered the city. The Empress Dowager made, or for whatever reason, Prince Duan became the foreign minister. So unlike Prince Gong, who was a whiskey drinker and a cigar smoker, and who knew a lot about the western side of things, Prince Chun obviously is someone who is very calm and someone who were able to balance different forces. Duan turned the whole foreign office into one big Boxer temple. And on that day, the same day, on the 10th of June, all the external communication of the Beijing diplomats were all cut off. So all the telegraph lines were cut off.